The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as Bree's heels clicked across our driveway at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I was under the hood of my beat-up Ford, trying to coax another month out of the alternator, when she emerged from our house looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. "Working late again?" I called out, wiping my hands on an oil-stained rag. She paused beside her pristine BMW, smoothing down a cocktail dress I'd never seen before. The fabric clung to her in ways that made my chest tighten with something between desire and suspicion. "Important client meeting," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. This could be the opportunity I've been waiting for. I nodded slowly, watching her manicured fingers fidget with her car keys. In 15 years of marriage, Bree had never worn anything that expensive to a client meeting. Hell, she'd never had client meetings at midnight. "Which client?" I asked. "The Braskin account." She slid into her car, the leather seats sighing under her weight. "Lennon wants to discuss the merger details privately." Lennon Braskin, her boss, the guy who drove a Tesla and wore suits that cost more than I made in a month at the auto shop. The same guy who'd been calling our house at odd hours, always with some urgent work crisis that required Bree's immediate attention. "Funny time for a business meeting," I said. Bree's laugh sounded forced. "You know how these corporate types operate, Porter. They work when inspiration strikes." The engine purred to life, and she backed out without another word. I stood there in our driveway, grease under my fingernails and doubt creeping up my spine like morning frost. "My name is Porter Kellor, and I fix things for a living. Cars, mostly, but sometimes other broken stuff that people bring to Murphy's auto shop on the edge of town. I've got steady hands, a good eye for problems, and the patience to work through complicated repairs. But standing there watching my wife disappear into the night, I realized some things might be beyond fixing. The next morning I found myself doing something I'd never done before, checking the GPS history on Bree's car through the family tracking app we'd set up for our daughter Emma's safety. My hands shook as I scrolled through the previous night's route. She hadn't gone to the office. She'd driven straight to the Sunset Motel on Route 9, a place known more for hourly rates than business meetings. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. 15 years of marriage. A daughter in her senior year of high school. A mortgage we'd been chipping away at together, month by month, paycheck by paycheck. "Dad, you look terrible." Emma bounced into the kitchen, her phone already glued to her ear as she grabbed a protein bar from the pantry. At 17, she moved through the world with the confidence of someone who'd never had her trust shattered. "Thanks for the pep talk," I said, managing a weak smile. "Mom left early again," she said, covering the phone's microphone. "She's been working crazy hours lately. Good thing, right? That promotion she's gunning for could really change things for us." Change things. Yeah, I was starting to understand just how much things were changing. After Emma left for school, I sat at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The house felt different somehow, like the walls were holding secrets. I noticed things I'd been blind to for weeks. The new perfume bottles on Bree's vanity, the designer handbag she claimed was a gift from a grateful client, the way she'd started working out obsessively and buying clothes that showed off the results. My phone buzzed. A text from Red Murphy, my boss and longtime friend. "You coming in today, or are you planning to fix the world's problems from your kitchen table?" Red had known me since high school, back when I was just another kid from the wrong side of town trying to make something of himself. He'd given me a job at his auto shop straight out of technical college, taught me everything about running a business, and never once made me feel like I owed him anything for the chance. I drove to work in a haze, my mind spinning through possibilities I didn't want to consider. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe Bree really had met a client at that motel. Maybe the cocktail dress and midnight timing were just coincidences. But my gut told a different story, and after 15 years of marriage, I'd learned to trust my instincts about the people I loved. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Red said when I walked into the shop. He was a mountain of a man with hands like ham hocks and a heart bigger than Texas. "What's eating you?" I told him everything. The late nights, the new clothes, the GPS coordinates that led to a motel instead of an office. Red listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing more serious with each detail. "Could be innocent," he said finally, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it any more than I did. "Could be," I agreed, "but I need to know for sure." That afternoon, I did something that made my stomach churn with guilt and necessity. I went through Bree's credit card statements. She'd always handled our finances, claiming she was better with numbers. I'd been happy to let her take care of it, trusting her completely. The statements painted a picture I didn't want to see. Charges at expensive restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel room in the city during a weekend she'd claimed to be visiting her sister. Lingerie purchases from stores that specialized in items I'd never seen her wear. But it was the text messages that finally shattered whatever hope I'd been clinging to. I found them on our shared tablet, the one we used for family calendars and shopping lists. Bree must have forgotten that her messages synced automatically. The conversation thread with Elle went back 3 months. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Porter's working late again. The motel room is perfect. No one will think to look for us there. I've never felt this way before. You make me feel alive again. When are you going to tell him?" "Soon. I just need to figure out the right way." I read through months of messages, each one feeling like a punch to the gut. They talked about me like I was an obstacle to overcome, a problem to be solved. Bree complained about our boring life, our cramped house, my limited ambitions. She painted herself as a woman trapped in a marriage to a man who couldn't give her the life she deserved. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was reading how little she thought of me, of us, of everything we'd built together. My hands were shaking as I took screenshots of everything. I forwarded the most damaging messages to my personal email, along with copies of the credit card statements and GPS records. If this was going to get ugly, I wanted evidence. Then I did something that surprised even me. I looked up Lennon Braskin's home address and found his wife's contact information. Avon Braskin. Married to Lennon for 12 years, according to her social media profiles. 2 kids, a beautiful home in the expensive part of town, and apparently no idea that her husband was planning to leave her for his subordinate. I stared at her phone number for 20 minutes before I found the courage to dial. "Hello?" Her voice was cultured, polished, everything Bree aspired to be. "Mrs. Braskin, my name is Porter Kellor. I think we need to talk." The silence stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. "About what?" she asked finally. "About what our spouses are doing at the Sunset Motel tonight." Another pause, then, "I'll meet you there in an hour." I spent that hour driving around town, trying to process what I was about to do. This wasn't just about confronting Bree anymore. I was about to blow up 2 marriages, possibly destroy careers, definitely change my daughter's life forever. But as I pulled into the motel parking lot and saw Avon Braskin waiting by a silver Mercedes, I realized I was past the point of backing down. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Avon was exactly what I'd expected. Elegant, composed, and radiating the kind of quiet fury that comes from years of suspecting the worst and finally having it confirmed. "Show me," she said, without preamble. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I handed her my phone with the text messages displayed. She read through them with the focused intensity of a lawyer reviewing a contract, which, according to her LinkedIn profile, she actually was. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Officially? About 6 hours. Unofficially? I've been suspicious for weeks." She nodded, handing back my phone. "Lennon's been working late, taking mysterious calls, buying clothes he thinks I won't notice. I've been waiting for him to slip up." "What do we do now?" Avon checked her watch. According to these messages, they should be arriving any minute. I suggest we give them the business meeting they're expecting. 20 minutes later, Bree's BMW pulled into the parking lot, followed closely by Lennon's Tesla. I watched from my truck as they met near the motel office, Lennon's hand sliding possessively around Bree's waist. They looked happy, excited, like teenagers sneaking out past curfew. Avon waited until they disappeared into room 117 before she made her move. She walked across the parking lot with the measured pace of someone who'd thought this through, knocked on the door, and announced loudly, "Housekeeping!" The door opened, and Lennon appeared in a hotel bathrobe, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and pure terror in the span of 3 seconds. "Hello, darling," Avon said sweetly. "I brought your business partner's husband. We thought we'd join your meeting." What followed was the kind of scene that gets replayed in small towns for years. Bree emerged from the bathroom in lingerie I'd never seen, took one look at me standing behind Avon, and let out a sound like a wounded animal. Lennon tried to close the door. Avon pushed past him into the room, taking in the champagne, the scattered clothes, the bed that had clearly been put to use. "Interesting merger strategy," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "A very hands-on approach." I found my voice somewhere in the chaos of emotions swirling through my chest. 15 years, Bree. 15 years, and this is how you handle being unsatisfied? She wrapped a hotel robe around herself, tears streaming down her face. "Porter, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me for months? That you've been planning to leave me for your boss? That everything we built together means so little to you that you'd throw it away for some corporate climber in an expensive suit?" Lennon stepped forward, puffing up like he was about to defend Bree's honor. "Now, look here." "No, you look here," I cut him off. "You're about to lose your wife, your kids, probably your job, and definitely your reputation. I'd suggest you think very carefully about what you say next." Avon was taking pictures with her phone, documenting everything: the champagne bottle, the scattered clothes, the guilty expressions, evidence for the divorce proceedings that were now inevitable. "We'll discuss terms tomorrow," she told Lennon. "Tonight you can sleep here. The room's already paid for." She turned to me. "Mr. Kellor, would you like to get coffee? I think we have a lot to discuss." I looked at Bree one last time. She was crying, mascara streaking down her cheeks, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd left our house in a cocktail dress. "I'll be home to pack some things," I told her. "We'll figure out the rest later." As Avon and I walked toward our cars, I heard Bree calling my name, but I didn't turn around. Some conversations are over before they begin. At the diner across from the motel, Avon and I sat in a booth that had seen better decades and talked about the practical realities of betrayal. She was a family law attorney, which meant she knew exactly how messy this was about to get. "They'll try to make us the villains," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "The bitter spouses who couldn't let go, who ruined true love out of spite. Is that what this is? True love?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is two people having a midlife crisis and thinking the grass is greener somewhere else. Give it 6 months, and they'll be cheating on each other. What do? We protect ourselves and our children. We document everything. We play it smart." I drove home through empty streets, my mind spinning with everything that had changed in a single evening. The house looked the same from the outside, but I knew I'd never see it the same way again. Bree's car wasn't in the driveway. I wondered if she was still at the motel, trying to salvage something from the wreckage of her secret relationship. Inside, I found Emma in the living room, still awake despite the late hour. "Dad? What's going on?" Mom called, crying, saying something about a misunderstanding. I sat down beside my daughter, looking at her young face and wondering how to explain that her family was about to implode. "Your mother and I are having some problems," I said carefully. We're going to need to have some difficult conversations over the next few days." Emma's expression shifted from confusion to worry. "Are you getting divorced?" "I don't know yet, but I want you to know that whatever happens between your mother and me, it has nothing to do with you. We both love you more than anything." She nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. At 17, she was old enough to understand that divorce meant choosing sides, splitting holidays, explaining to friends why her parents couldn't be in the same room. "Is there someone else?" she asked quietly. I hesitated. Emma deserved honesty, but she was still Bree's daughter too. "That's something you'll need to discuss with your mother," I said finally. That night, I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how quickly a life can change. This morning, I'd been a married man with a stable family and a predictable future. Tonight, I was something else entirely. Bree came home around 3 in the morning. I heard her car in the driveway, her key in the lock, her footsteps on the stairs. She paused outside our bedroom door for a long moment before continuing to the guest room. We didn't speak until the next morning, when I found her in the kitchen making coffee with shaking hands. "Porter," she began, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I've been thinking all night about what I want to say to you," I said. "About how angry I am, how betrayed I feel, how you've destroyed 15 years of trust for a few months of excitement." She opened her mouth to respond, but I continued. "But you know what? I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. You want out of this marriage? Fine. You want to be with Lennon? Good luck with that. But you don't get to rewrite our history to make yourself feel better about what you've done." I slid a manila envelope across the kitchen table. "Separation papers. I had a lawyer friend draw them up this morning. You can review them with your attorney." Bree stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Porter, please. Can't we talk about this? Can't we try to work things out?" "Work what out? The months of lying? The secret credit cards? The fact that you've been planning to leave me for another man? It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? Were you going to sit me down over dinner and explain that you'd found someone better? Were you going to wait until after Emma graduated? Or were you just going to keep sneaking around until you got caught?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I'll be staying at Red's place for a while," I said. "We can figure out the house and everything else through our lawyers." As I packed a bag, I could hear Bree crying in the kitchen. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to find a way to fix this like I fixed everything else. But some things, once broken, can't be repaired. They can only be replaced. The first week at Red's place passed in a blur of sleepless nights and awkward conversations with Emma, who kept asking when I was coming home. Red lived in a converted apartment above his auto shop, a bachelor pad that smelled like motor oil and microwave dinners. It wasn't much, but it gave me space to think without Bree's presence clouding my judgment. "You're handling this better than I expected," Red said on Friday evening as we shared a pizza and watched the local news. Most guys would be drowning their sorrows or picking fights in bars by now. "Give me time," I said, though the truth was I felt strangely calm. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by something colder and more focused. I keep waiting for the anger to hit, but mostly I just feel clear. Clear about what? About what I need to do. Red raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He'd known me long enough to recognize when I was working through a problem in my head, the same way I approached a complicated engine repair. My phone buzzed with a text from Avon Braskin. "Coffee tomorrow? I have updates." We met at the same diner where we'd talked after the motel confrontation. Avon looked tired but determined, her lawyer persona fully engaged. "Lennon filed for divorce yesterday," she said without preamble. "He's claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for joint custody of the kids." "How are you handling it?" "Better than he expected. He thought I'd fall apart, maybe make some desperate attempt to save our marriage. Instead, I've frozen our joint accounts, changed the locks on the house, and filed a motion to prevent him from removing any assets until we reach a settlement. I was impressed, despite everything. You don't mess around. 15 years as a family law attorney teaches you to think strategically. What about Bree? She's been calling constantly, wanting to work things out. She seems to think this is some kind of temporary setback that we can overcome with counseling and time. Is it? I considered the question. A month ago, I might have said yes. Despite our problems, despite the growing distance between us, I'd still believed in the foundation of our marriage. But reading those text messages, seeing how little she thought of me and our life together, had changed something fundamental. No, I said. Even if I could forgive the cheating, I can't forgive how she talked about me to him, how she made our entire marriage sound like a prison sentence she was serving. Avon nodded. Lennon did the same thing. According to his messages, I was a frigid control freak who didn't understand his ambitions. Apparently, Bree was the first woman who truly got him. Do you think they'll stay together? Does it matter? They've both shown us who they really are. Whether they end up together or destroy each other is their problem now. Over the weekend, I started hearing whispers around town. Murphy's auto shop sat at the crossroads of 3 neighborhoods, which meant I got customers from every social circle in our small city. Word was spreading about the motel incident, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Mrs. Henderson, who brought her ancient Buick in for monthly checkups, leaned conspiratorially across the service counter. I heard your wife was caught with her boss at that seedy motel on Route 9. Is it true they were planning to run away together? I don't really want to discuss my personal life, Mrs. Henderson. Of course, dear. But you know how people talk. They're saying she was stealing money from the company too, planning to disappear with him to Mexico or somewhere. I hadn't heard that particular rumor before, but it didn't surprise me. Small towns fed on gossip, and a good scandal could sustain conversations for months. Emma was dealing with her own version of the rumor mill. She'd been getting questions at school, sympathetic looks from teachers, and the kind of attention that made teenagers want to disappear. Everyone knows, she said when she came to visit me at Red's on Sunday afternoon. Sarah Martinez's mom works at the bank, and she told Sarah that Mom tried to withdraw a bunch of money from your joint account but couldn't because you'd already frozen it. That's not exactly what happened. But something like that happened, right? Mom's been weird all week, crying one minute and angry the next. She keeps saying you're being unreasonable, that you won't even listen to her side of the story. I studied my daughter's face, seeing traces of both Bree and myself in her features. She had her mother's eyes but my stubborn chin, and right now she looked like she was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. What do you want to know? I asked. The truth, not the version Mom's telling, not the rumors at school, just what actually happened. So I told her. Not everything. She didn't need to know about the lingerie or the specific details of what I'd found at the motel, but enough to help her understand why our family was falling apart. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious as the story unfolded. How long was it going on? She asked when I finished. At least 3 months, based on what I found, maybe longer. And she was planning to leave us? Leave me? I don't think she'd thought through what that would mean for you. Emma was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the auto shop below. Finally, she said, I'm sorry, Dad. I know Mom's been unhappy, but I didn't think she'd do something like this. It's not your fault, kiddo. None of this is your fault. Are you going to try to get back together? No, I don't think so. She nodded like she'd expected that answer. Good. I mean, it sucks that you're getting divorced, but if she cheated on you, then she doesn't deserve another chance. That evening, I got a call from Bree. I'd been avoiding her calls all week, but something in Emma's voice made me think it was time to have the conversation we'd been postponing. Porter, thank God you answered. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you come home? Just for an hour. There are things I need to explain. things you don't understand. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at the house. When I arrived, I found Bree in the living room with a bottle of wine and what looked like a prepared speech. "I know you're angry," she began. "I know what I did was wrong. But I need you to understand that it wasn't about not loving you. It was about feeling trapped, feeling like I was disappearing into this life that was too small for who I wanted to be. So you decided to have an affair. I decided to feel alive again. Lennon made me remember what it was like to be desired, to be seen as more than just a wife and mother and employee. With him, I felt like I mattered. You mattered to me. You mattered to Emma. Did I? When was the last time you looked at me the way you used to? When was the last time we talked about dreams instead of bills and schedules and whose turn it was to take out the trash?" I wanted to argue, but part of what she was saying rang true. We had fallen into routines, taking each other for granted in the way that long-married couples do, but that didn't justify what she'd done. "So instead of talking to me about feeling unfulfilled, you started sleeping with your boss." It wasn't supposed to happen. We were working late on the Jameson account, and he was telling me about his problems with Avon, and I was telling him about feeling invisible in my own life, and one thing led to another. One thing led to 3 months of lying and sneaking around. Bree's composure cracked. "I know how it looks. I know I handled it badly, but I was going to tell you. I was trying to figure out how to do it without destroying everything." "Everything's already destroyed, Bree. The moment you decided that your happiness was more important than our marriage, you destroyed it." "It doesn't have to be. We could go to counseling. We could work on the problems in our marriage. Lennon and I... It's over." Avon made sure of that. He lost his job, his wife filed for divorce, and he's probably going to lose his house too. And now you want to come back to your safe backup plan. That's not what this is. Isn't it? You took a gamble on a new life with Lennon, and it didn't work out, so now you want to return to the old life you were so desperate to escape. Bree started crying, the kind of desperate tears that come when someone realizes they've lost something they can't get back. "I made a mistake, Porter, a terrible, stupid mistake, but people make mistakes. People forgive each other and move on and build something better. Some mistakes can be forgiven. This isn't one of them." I stood to leave, but Bree grabbed my arm. "Please, don't give up on us. Don't give up on 15 years. You gave up on 15 years the moment you decided I wasn't enough for you." The next week brought new complications. Lennon, apparently desperate to salvage something from his imploding life, started showing up at places where he knew I'd be. First the auto shop, then the diner where I ate lunch, then the grocery store where I was buying frozen dinners and instant coffee. "We need to talk," he said, cornering me in the cereal aisle. "No, we don't. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. Bree and I, we never meant for anyone to get hurt. But people did get hurt. Your wife, your kids, my daughter. The fact that you didn't mean for it to happen doesn't make it better. Look, I know you're angry, but taking it out on Bree isn't going to solve anything. She's a good woman who made a mistake." I turned to face him fully, taking in his expensive haircut and designer clothes, the kind of polished appearance that came from money and privilege. "Let me be very clear about something, Lennon. You don't get to tell me how to handle my marriage or my divorce. You don't get to defend Bree to me, and you definitely don't get to follow me around town trying to manage the consequences of your choices. I'm just trying to... You're trying to make yourself feel better about destroying 2 families. But that's not my problem. That's yours." I walked away, leaving him standing in the cereal aisle, looking like a man who'd never been told no in his life. That afternoon, Red found me in the shop bay, taking out my frustration on a stubborn transmission. "Heard you had a run-in with the boyfriend," he said. "Word travels fast. Mrs. Patterson saw the whole thing, said you handled it well, didn't let him get under your skin. He's scared. His whole life is falling apart, and he's looking for someone to blame besides himself. What about Bree? How's she handling things? I paused in my work, considering the question. She's in denial. She keeps thinking this is something we can fix, some temporary problem that will blow over if we just try hard enough. Maybe she's right. Maybe you could work things out. I looked at Red, surprised. He'd been supportive of my decision to separate, never once suggesting I should forgive and forget. You think I should take her back? I think you should do whatever makes you happy, but I also think you should be sure about what that is before you make any permanent decisions. That night, I lay in the narrow bed above the auto shop and thought about what Red had said. Was I being too harsh? Was I letting pride and hurt feelings destroy something that could be repaired? But every time I considered the possibility of reconciliation, I remembered those text messages, the casual way Bree had dismissed our life together, the excitement in her words when she talked about Lennon, the months of lies and deception. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. They could only be replaced. The question was, what did I want to replace my marriage with? As I drifted off to sleep, I found myself thinking about Avon Braskin. Not romantically. We were both too raw from our respective betrayals for that. But as an example of how to handle betrayal with dignity and strength. She hadn't fallen apart when her world imploded. She'd gotten strategic. Maybe it was time for me to do the same. The turning point came on a Thursday morning when I discovered that Bree had been busier than I'd realized. I was at the bank trying to straighten out our joint accounts when the manager mentioned an interesting detail. Your wife attempted to transfer a significant amount to a new account last week, Janet Morrison said, pulling up the records on her computer. The transaction was flagged because of the separation notice you filed, but she seemed quite surprised when it was declined. How significant? $47,000, nearly everything in your joint savings. I felt something cold settle in my chest. She tried to clean out our savings account? The transfer was set up to go to an account with both her name and a Lennon Braskin on it, a joint account they'd opened the previous month. So much for Bree's claims that the affair was an emotional mistake that got out of hand. You don't open joint bank accounts with someone unless you're planning a future together. Is there any way to trace what they intended to use that money for? Janet hesitated. I probably shouldn't share this, but given the circumstances, they'd also applied for a business loan using that account as collateral. Something about starting a consulting firm together. I drove back to the auto shop in a daze. Bree hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been planning an entirely new life with Lennon, financed by our savings. The money I'd been setting aside for Emma's college, for our retirement, for the security of our family. Red took one look at my face and poured 2 cups of coffee without asking. Bad news at the bank? I told him about the attempted transfer, the joint account, the business loan application. With each detail, his expression grew darker. She was going to take everything, he said finally. Everything we'd saved in 15 years of marriage. What are you going to do about it? I thought about that question for the rest of the day. What was I going to do? The legal system would sort out the financial aspects eventually, but that could take months or even years. In the meantime, Bree was still living in our house, driving her BMW, maintaining the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to while planning to abandon it for something better. That evening, I called Avon. I need to ask you something, I said when she answered. How did you handle the practical side of things? The house, the cars, the daily logistics of separating your life from Lennon's? Methodically. I made a list of everything that was jointly owned, everything that was in my name, everything that was in his name. Then I secured what I could legally secure and documented everything else. What do you mean secured? I mean, I made sure he couldn't liquidate assets or hide money while we were working out the divorce settlement. It's amazing how quickly someone can make community property disappear if they're motivated enough. Bree tried to transfer our entire savings to an account she shared with Lennon. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, when? Last week. The bank stopped it because of the separation filing, but she had it all set up. Porter, you need to get aggressive about protecting yourself. Bree isn't the woman you married anymore. She's someone who was willing to steal your life savings to start a new life with another man. You can't afford to be nice about this. That weekend, I took Avon's advice and got methodical. I made copies of every financial document I could find, photographed every valuable item in the house, and created a detailed inventory of our shared assets. I also did something that felt petty but necessary. I canceled the credit cards that were in my name but that Bree had been using. The call came on Sunday afternoon. Porter, what did you do to my credit cards? Bree's voice was sharp with panic. I canceled them. They were in my name, and I'm responsible for any charges made on them. You can't do that. I need those cards. I have expenses, obligations. Then you'll need to apply for cards in your own name. This is ridiculous. You're being vindictive. I'm being practical. You were planning to clean out our savings account to start a business with your boyfriend. I'd say that makes you a credit risk. How did you... She caught herself, but it was too late. How did I know about the joint account with Lennon? How did I know about the business loan application? Because I'm not as stupid as you thought I was. The silence stretched between us, filled with everything we weren't saying. It wasn't what you think, she said finally. It was exactly what I think. You weren't just having an affair, Bree. You were planning to rob me blind and disappear with him. We were going to pay you back. Once the business got established, we were going to make sure you were taken care of. How generous of you to plan to take care of me with my own money. That conversation marked the end of any possibility of an amicable divorce. If Bree was willing to steal our savings, I couldn't trust her to be reasonable about anything else. I hired a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but Patricia Wong, the most aggressive divorce attorney in the county. She had a reputation for protecting her clients' interests with surgical precision. Your wife made a serious mistake trying to move that money, Patricia said during our first meeting. It shows intent to defraud, which gives us significant leverage in the settlement negotiations. I don't want to destroy her. I just want to protect myself and my daughter. Sometimes those are the same thing. Tell me about the boyfriend. I gave Patricia everything I had on Lennon, his employment history, his financial situation, the timeline of his relationship with Bree. She took notes with the focused intensity of a general planning a battle. He's lost his job? According to Avon, yes. His wife filed for divorce, and the company decided he was too much of a liability to keep around. So he's unemployed, going through an expensive divorce, and his meal ticket, your wife, just lost access to your joint assets. That's about the size of it. Patricia smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Desperate people make poor decisions. Let's see what poor decisions they make next. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The following Tuesday, I got a call from Emma's school. She'd been in a fight with another student and was suspended for the rest of the week. I found her in the principal's office, her knuckles scraped and her face flushed with anger. What happened? I asked as we walked to my truck. Jessica Morrison was running her mouth about you and Mom, saying you were trying to steal all of Mom's money, that you were being a vindictive jerk who couldn't handle losing his wife to a better man. So you hit her? So I corrected her misconceptions. Despite everything, I felt a surge of pride in my daughter. Emma, you can't solve problems by punching people. Why not? It worked. Jessica, shut up real quick. Because violence doesn't actually solve anything. It just creates new problems. Like Mom's affair solved her problems? I didn't have a good answer for that. That evening, I got an angry call from Bree. Emma told me what happened at school. This is your fault, Porter. You've turned our daughter against me. I haven't turned Emma against anyone. She's 17 years old and smart enough to understand what's happening in her family. She doesn't understand anything. She's a child who's been poisoned against her mother by a bitter, vindictive man who can't accept that his marriage is over. My marriage is over because you cheated on me and tried to steal our savings. Emma understands that perfectly well. I never tried to steal anything. That money was as much mine as yours. The money you earned? Yes. The money we earned together as a married couple? Yes. But not the money you planned to take without telling me to start a business with your boyfriend. Lennon and I had a business plan. We were going to build something together, something bigger than either of us could create alone. With my money. With our money. Money that would have been mine anyway in the divorce settlement. Maybe. But you didn't wait for the divorce settlement. You tried to take it while we were still married, without my knowledge or consent. That's called theft. The conversation ended with Bree hanging up on me, but it clarified something important. She still didn't think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she was the victim of my unreasonable expectations and vindictive behavior. That weekend, I took Emma out for dinner at her favorite restaurant. She'd been quiet since the school incident, and I wanted to make sure she was handling everything okay. "Are you ashamed of me?" she asked over burgers and fries. "For defending my honor in a school cafeteria fight? Never. For having parents who are getting divorced. For being the girl whose mom cheated with her boss." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Emma, listen to me. I am proud of you every single day. You're smart. You're strong. You stand up for what you believe in, and you're handling this situation better than most adults would. It sucks, though." "Yeah, it does. Divorce sucks, cheating sucks, having your family fall apart sucks. But you know what doesn't suck?" "What?" "You. Me. The fact that we're going to get through this together and come out stronger on the other side." She squeezed my hand. "Promise?" "Promise." That night, I lay in bed thinking about promises and how easy they are to make, how hard they are to keep. I'd promised Bree 15 years ago that I'd love her for better or worse, in sickness and in health, until we were parted by something stronger than human weakness. But I'd also promised Emma that I'd protect her, provide for her, and be the kind of father she could be proud of. Some promises, it turned out, were more important than others. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Avon called while I was having coffee and reading the newspaper. "Lennon's been arrested," she said without preamble. "For what?" "Embezzlement. Apparently, the company did an audit after they fired him and discovered some interesting discrepancies in several client accounts." I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "How much?" "Nearly $200,000 over the past year. He'd been skimming from client accounts and covering it up by moving money between different projects." "Does Bree know?" "She should by now. It made the morning news." I turned on the local news and found the story running as the lead item. Lennon's corporate headshot filled the screen while the anchor explained the charges against him: fraud, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty. My phone started ringing almost immediately. "Porter, did you see the news?" Bree's voice was frantic. "I saw it. This is insane. Lennon would never steal money. He's being set up." "By who?" "By his company. By Avon. By someone who wants to destroy him. Or maybe he's exactly what he appears to be. A guy who thought he was smarter than everyone else and got caught. You don't understand. Lennon was planning to expose some irregularities in the company's accounting. This is retaliation." "Bree, listen to yourself. Your boyfriend has been arrested for stealing money from his clients, and you're spinning conspiracy theories to explain it away. He's not my boyfriend anymore. We ended things after that night at the motel. But you were still planning to start a business with him. You were still planning to use our savings to finance it. That was before I knew about the investigation. So you're saying you would have gone into business with him if he hadn't gotten caught stealing?" Silence on the other end of the line. "I need to think," she said finally. "This changes everything." After she hung up, I sat in Red's kitchen and tried to process what this meant. Bree had been planning to leave me for a man who was stealing money from his clients. She'd been willing to risk our savings on a business partnership with someone who was apparently a criminal. Either she was incredibly naive, or she'd known more about Lennon's activities than she was admitting. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Wong. Saw the news about Braskin. This is very good for us. Can you come in this afternoon? At Patricia's office, I learned just how good Lennon's arrest was for my case. If your wife knew about Braskin's illegal activities, she could be considered an accessory, Patricia explained. Even if she didn't know, the fact that she was planning to go into business with him raises questions about her judgment and her fitness as a parent. I don't want to take Emma away from her mother. But you want to make sure Emma is protected, right? That she's not exposed to people who make poor decisions that could put her at risk? I thought about Emma defending my honor in the school cafeteria, about the promises I'd made to her, about the kind of father I wanted to be. What do you recommend? We push for primary custody, with Bree getting supervised visitation, until she can demonstrate that she's not involved with people who engage in criminal activities. That seems harsh. Porter, your wife tried to steal your life savings to start a business with a man who's now been arrested for embezzlement. Harsh is what the situation calls for. That evening, I had dinner with Emma and told her about Lennon's arrest. She listened with the same focused attention she'd inherited from me. So Mom's boyfriend is a criminal? He's been charged with crimes. He hasn't been convicted yet. But Mom was going to leave you for him? She was considering it. Emma shook her head. Mom always said she was smart about people, that she could read them better than anyone. I guess she was wrong about that. People aren't always who they seem to be, kiddo. Sometimes they're better than we expect. Sometimes they're worse. Which one was Mom? I considered the question. A month ago, I would have said Bree was better than I expected, that she was stronger and more capable than I'd given her credit for. Now, I wasn't sure what to think. I think your mom is someone who got lost, I said finally. She wanted something different from her life, and she made some bad choices trying to get it. Do you think she'll find her way back? I hope so, for her sake and for yours. But as I tucked Emma into bed that night, I realized I wasn't sure I wanted Bree to find her way back to us. Too much had happened. Too much trust had been broken. Too many lies had been told. Some people, once lost, were better off staying that way. Lennon's arrest changed the entire dynamic of our small-town drama. Within days, everyone knew that Bree had been involved with a man who was now facing serious criminal charges. The gossip mill, which had been content to whisper about a simple affair, went into overdrive with speculation about what else might be uncovered. I was changing oil on Mrs. Patterson's Honda when she leaned over the counter with the latest rumors. They're saying your wife might have known about the missing money, she said in a stage whisper, that she was helping him hide it in offshore accounts. Mrs. Patterson, I don't think Bree was involved in anything illegal. But she was planning to go into business with him, wasn't she? Using your money. Seems awfully convenient that she'd have access to clean funds right when he needed them. I'd been trying not to think about that possibility, but it kept nagging at me. The timing of Bree's attempted withdrawal, the joint account, the business loan application, it all lined up suspiciously well with what must have been Lennon's growing desperation to cover his tracks. That afternoon, I got a call from Detective Ray Morrison, Mrs. Patterson's son, and one of the investigators on Lennon's case. Porter, I need to ask you some questions about your wife's relationship with Lennon Braskin. What kind of questions? The kind that might help us understand how much she knew about his financial activities. We met at the police station, a conversation I'd never imagined having about the woman I'd been married to for 15 years. When did you first become aware of your wife's relationship with Braskin? Detective Morrison asked. I walked him through the timeline. The late nights, the new clothes, the discovery of the text messages, the motel confrontation. Did she ever mention Braskin having financial problems? Not directly, but she talked about him being unhappy in his marriage, feeling unappreciated at work, wanting to start his own company. Did she ever suggest that he had access to money that wasn't his? No, but I hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. She did try to transfer our entire savings to a joint account she'd opened with him. $47,000. Morrison made a note. When was this? About 2 weeks ago. The bank stopped the transfer because I'd filed separation papers, but it was all set up to go through. And this was for a business they were planning to start together? That's what she told me. Morrison asked a few more questions, then leaned back in his chair. Porter, I'm going to be straight with you. We're looking at the possibility that Braskin was using his relationship with your wife to launder some of the money he stole. Clean funds from your joint account mixed with dirty money from his embezzlement scheme. The room felt like it was tilting. Are you saying Bree was involved in money laundering? I'm saying we're investigating all possibilities. Your wife may have been an unwitting participant, or she may have known exactly what was happening. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with implications I didn't want to consider. If Bree had been knowingly involved in Lennon's crimes, Emma could be at risk of being associated with criminal activity. Worse, if Bree was charged as an accessory, Emma could end up in the foster care system while everything got sorted out. That evening, I called Patricia Wong and explained the situation. This is actually very good for your custody case, she said, but it's potentially very bad for Emma's stability. We need to move quickly to establish you as her primary guardian before any charges are filed against your wife. How quickly? I'll file an emergency custody motion first thing tomorrow morning. We'll argue that Emma's safety requires her to be placed with the parent who isn't under criminal investigation. Bree isn't under investigation yet. She will be. And when that happens, you want to already have legal custody established. The next morning brought chaos. I was at the auto shop when Emma called, crying and barely coherent. Dad, there are police at the house. They're searching Mom's room, taking her computer, asking her all kinds of questions about Lennon. Where are you? At school, but everyone's talking about it. Someone's mom saw the police cars and posted about it on Facebook. Come to the shop after school. Don't go home until I can figure out what's happening. I called Bree's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried the house phone and got a busy signal. Finally, I drove over to see what was happening. 3 police cars were parked in our driveway. Through the living room window, I could see officers moving around with boxes and evidence bags. Bree was sitting on the front porch with Detective Morrison, her face pale and her hands shaking. I parked across the street and watched as they loaded her computer, several boxes of papers, and what looked like financial documents into their cars. The whole thing took about an hour, and when they left, Bree remained on the porch, staring at nothing. I walked across the street and sat down beside her. What did they want? Everything. Bank records, computer files, phone records, anything that might show communication between me and Lennon about money. Did you have anything to hide? She looked at me with exhausted eyes. I don't know anymore, Porter. I thought I knew what was happening, but apparently I didn't know anything. What do you mean? Lennon told me he was being forced out of his job because he'd discovered some accounting irregularities. He said his boss was trying to make him the scapegoat for problems that had been going on for years. And you believed him? Why wouldn't I? He was smart, successful, respected in the community. I never thought he'd lie to me about something that serious. But you were planning to go into business with him using our money. He said he had investors lined up, that my contribution would just be seed money to get things started. He was going to pay it back within 6 months. I studied her face, trying to determine if she was telling the truth or still covering for Lennon. Bree, did you know he was stealing money from his clients? Of course not. If I'd known that, do you think I would have risked our savings on a business with him? I don't know what to think anymore. She started crying then, the kind of broken sobs that come from someone whose entire world has collapsed. I've lost everything, Porter. My job, my marriage, my reputation, and now the police think I'm some kind of criminal. All because I was stupid enough to fall for a man who turned out to be a liar and a thief. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would work out somehow. But a larger part of me remembered the months of deception, the casual way she'd dismissed our marriage in those text messages, the fact that she'd been willing to steal our savings for a new life with another man. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know. My lawyer says they're building a case against Lennon, and they want to make sure I'm not involved. If they decide I was an unwitting victim, I might be okay. If they think I knew what was happening." She didn't finish the sentence, but we both understood the implications. That afternoon, Emma came to the auto shop looking shaken and angry. "Half the school thinks Mom's going to jail," she said. "The other half thinks you set her up somehow. What do you think?" "I think this whole situation is insane. 6 months ago, we were a normal family. Now Mom's being investigated for money laundering, and you're living above a garage." "I know it's hard, kiddo, but we're going to get through this." "Are we? Because it feels like everything's falling apart, and there's nothing any of us can do to stop it." That evening, I got a call from Patricia Wong with news that made everything more complicated. "The judge approved the emergency custody motion," she said. "Emma will be staying with you while the investigation into your wife continues." "How did Bree take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. She's fighting it, claiming you're using the situation to manipulate the custody arrangement." "Am I?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Porter, your wife was involved with a man who stole $200,000 from his clients. She tried to transfer your life savings to a joint account with him. Whether she knew about his crimes or not, she showed incredibly poor judgment that could have put your daughter at risk. Protecting Emma isn't manipulation, it's good parenting." The next few days passed in a blur of legal meetings, school conferences, and difficult conversations with Emma about why she couldn't go home to her mother. Bree was allowed supervised visits, but the house was considered part of the ongoing investigation, and Emma wasn't allowed to stay there overnight. "This is temporary," I told Emma, as we set up a more permanent sleeping arrangement in Red's spare room. "Once the investigation is finished, we'll figure out a better living situation." "What if Mom gets arrested?" "Then we'll deal with that when it happens." "What if she goes to jail?" "Then you'll live with me, and we'll visit her as often as we can." Emma nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. At 17, she was old enough to understand that her life was changing in ways that couldn't be undone. That weekend, I took Emma to visit Bree at a supervised visitation center downtown. It was a sterile, institutional place that made normal conversation nearly impossible. "I'm sorry, baby," Bree told Emma. "I'm sorry for all of this, for the mess I've made of our family." "It's okay, Mom." "No, it's not okay. None of this is okay. I made terrible choices, and now you're paying the price for them." Emma started crying, and Bree reached across the table to hold her hand. "I want you to know that everything I did, I thought I was doing for us. I thought I was trying to build a better life for our family." "By cheating on Dad?" Bree winced. "By trying to find a way to be happy again. I felt so trapped, so invisible, like I was disappearing into this life that was too small for who I wanted to be. So you decided to destroy everything instead?" "I decided to take a chance on something that felt real and exciting and full of possibility. I didn't know it would lead to this." After the visit, Emma was quiet during the drive back to the auto shop. "Do you think Mom knew about the money?" she asked finally. "I honestly don't know. Part of me thinks she was just naive and got caught up in something she didn't understand. But part of me wonders if she knew more than she's admitting." "Which part do you believe?" I thought about that question as we pulled into the parking lot behind Murphy's auto shop. "I believe your mother is a good person who made some very bad choices. Whether she knew about Lennon's crimes or not, she chose to risk our family's security for a relationship with a man she barely knew. That shows a level of selfishness and poor judgment that I'm still trying to understand." "Do you hate her?" "No, kiddo. I don't hate her, but I don't trust her anymore, and I'm not sure I ever will again. That night, as I lay in the narrow bed above the auto shop, I thought about trust and how fragile it really was. 15 years of marriage, of shared dreams and mutual support had been destroyed in a few months of lies and deception. But Emma still trusted me. She still believed that I would protect her, provide for her, and help her navigate the chaos that our family had become. That trust, at least, was something I could honor. The next week brought news that changed everything again. Detective Morrison called with an update on the investigation. "We've cleared your wife of any criminal involvement," he said. "The evidence suggests she was an unwitting victim of Braskin's manipulation, not a co-conspirator." I felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief that Emma wouldn't have to deal with having a mother in prison. Disappointment that Bree's vindication somehow made my anger seem less justified. What happens now? Braskin's going to prison, probably for 10 to 15 years. Your wife is free to rebuild her life however she sees fit. And the custody situation? That's between you, your wife, and the family court system. From a criminal justice perspective, there's no reason Emma can't live with her mother. That afternoon, I called Patricia Wong to discuss our options. The criminal investigation being closed doesn't change the fact that your wife showed incredibly poor judgment, she said. We can still argue for primary custody based on her affair, her attempt to steal your savings, and her involvement with a man who turned out to be a criminal. But it weakens our case, doesn't it? Somewhat. But we still have a strong argument that Emma's best interests are served by living with you. That evening, I sat Emma down and explained the situation. So, Mom's not going to jail? No, she's not going to jail. And I can live with her again if I want to? Eventually, yes, but there are still custody issues to work out. Emma was quiet for a long time, processing this new information. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you want me to choose you over Mom? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Emma, I want you to be happy and safe. If that means living with your mother, then that's what I want too. But if I had to choose? I looked at my daughter's serious face and realized that she was asking me to be honest about something I'd been trying not to think about. If you had to choose, I'd want you to choose me. Not because I'm trying to win some contest with your mother, but because I think I can provide you with the stability and security you need right now. She nodded. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Why? Because I've already chosen you. What Mom did, I understand that she was unhappy, and I understand that people make mistakes. But she was willing to risk everything we had as a family for a man she'd known for a few months. That's not the kind of person I want making decisions about my life. That night, I called Bree and told her about Emma's decision. She's 17 years old, Bree said. She doesn't understand the complexities of adult relationships. She understands that you were willing to abandon our family for a man who turned out to be a criminal. I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was trying to find a way to be happy. At our expense. Porter, I know you're angry, and I know you have every right to be. But Emma is my daughter too. I deserve a chance to rebuild my relationship with her. You'll have that chance, but she's going to live with me. We'll see about that. The custody battle that followed was brutal and expensive, but in the end, the judge agreed that Emma's best interests were served by living with me. Bree was granted generous visitation rights, but primary custody remained with me. The day the decision was finalized, I took Emma out for dinner to celebrate. How does it feel to be officially stuck with me? I asked. Pretty good, actually. You're not the worst father in the world. High praise indeed. She smiled, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. Despite everything, Bree was still her mother, and the custody decision represented a fundamental change in their relationship. Are you okay with all this? I asked. I'm okay with living with you. I'm not okay with the fact that our family fell apart, but I'm okay with how we're putting the pieces back together. That's all any of us can do, kiddo. Pick up the pieces and build something new. As we walked out of the restaurant that night, I realized that the war was finally over. Bree and I would continue to be connected through Emma, but the battle for our family's future had been decided. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. 6 months after the custody decision, I finally had enough money saved to move Emma and myself into a real apartment. It wasn't much, a 2-bedroom place above the bakery on Main Street, but it had a kitchen that didn't smell like motor oil and enough space for Emma to have friends over without everyone sitting on Red's ancient couch. "It's perfect, Dad," Emma said as we carried boxes up the narrow stairs. "It actually feels like home." Home. The word had taken on new meaning over the past year. It wasn't the house I'd shared with Bree, with its perfect lawn and mortgage payments and memories of family dinners. Home was wherever Emma and I were building our new life together. Bree had moved in with her sister after losing the house to foreclosure. Without my income to help with the mortgage, and with her own job prospects limited by the scandal surrounding Lennon's arrest, she'd been forced to give up the lifestyle she'd worked so hard to achieve. "She asks about you sometimes," Emma told me one evening as we were making dinner in our small kitchen. "She wants to know if you're dating anyone." "What do you tell her?" "That you're too busy taking care of me to worry about dating." It was true, mostly. I'd had a few offers. Patricia Wong had made it clear she was interested in something beyond a professional relationship, and Mrs. Henderson had tried to set me up with her divorced niece, but I wasn't ready for that kind of complication yet. "Would it bother you if I started dating?" I asked. Emma considered the question while stirring pasta sauce. "Depends on who you're dating. If it's someone who makes you happy and treats me decently, then no. If it's someone like Lennon, then yes. I think I can promise you it won't be someone like Lennon." "Good, because I'd have to have another cafeteria fight, and I'm trying to graduate without any more suspensions." That weekend was the annual Founders' Day Festival, a small-town tradition that brought everyone together for food trucks, live music, and the kind of forced community spirit that made small towns both charming and suffocating. Emma wanted to go with her friends, which left me with an evening to myself for the first time in months. I was walking through the festival, enjoying the anonymity of being alone in a crowd, when I spotted Bree near the bandstand. She was with her sister and nephew, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her since before the affair started. She saw me at the same moment I saw her, and for a few seconds, we just stood there, two people who'd shared 15 years of their lives and now barely knew how to be in the same space. "Porter," she said, walking over with a tentative smile. "How are you?" "I'm good. You?" "Getting by. Taking things one day at a time." We made awkward small talk about Emma, about work, about anything except the elephant-sized history between us. Finally, Bree took a breath and said what we were both thinking. "I owe you an apology, a real one, not the defensive excuses I was making when everything first fell apart." "Okay." "I was selfish and stupid and cruel. I convinced myself that I deserved to be happy, that my feelings mattered more than our marriage or your feelings or Emma's stability. I told myself that you'd be fine, that you were strong enough to handle anything, so it was okay for me to do whatever I wanted." I listened without interrupting, watching her face as she worked through words she'd clearly been practicing. "I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't undo the damage or give you back the trust I threw away. But I need you to know that I understand what I did to you, to us, to our family." "What do you want from me, Bree?" "Nothing. I don't want anything from you except maybe the chance to prove that I'm not the person who did those things anymore." "For Emma's sake?" "For Emma's sake, and for my own. I need to believe that I'm capable of being better than I was." We stood there in the middle of the festival, surrounded by the sounds of laughter and music and normal families enjoying a normal evening, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of peace with the way things had turned out. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said finally. "I hope you do too." Later that evening, I was sitting on the steps of our apartment building when Emma came home from the festival. "I saw you talking to Mom," she said, settling down beside me. "How was that?" "Strange, sad, but not as hard as I thought it would be." "Do you think you'll ever be friends again?" "I don't know. Maybe someday. Right now, we're just two people who used to be married and are trying to figure out how to co-parent you without making things worse." Emma leaned against my shoulder. "That's probably enough for now." "Yeah, I think it is." The next few months passed quietly. Emma finished her senior year with grades good enough to earn her a partial scholarship to the state university. I got promoted to shop manager when Red decided to semi-retire and spend more time fishing. Bree started dating a high school teacher she'd met through her sister, someone who seemed kind and stable and completely different from Lennon. "His name is David, and he teaches history," Emma reported after spending a weekend with her mother. "He's kind of boring, but in a good way. Like he reads books for fun and grows tomatoes in his backyard." "How do you feel about that?" "I like that Mom's with someone who isn't going to blow up her life. And I like that he doesn't try too hard to be my friend. He just treats me like a normal person." In August, we threw Emma a graduation party in the small backyard behind our apartment building. It wasn't fancy, folding tables, grocery store cake, decorations from the dollar store, but it was ours. Red came, along with some of Emma's friends and their parents, a few of my co-workers, and even Mrs. Henderson with her famous potato salad. Bree came too, with David, and for the first time since the divorce, we managed to be in the same space without tension or awkwardness. We were just Emma's parents, celebrating our daughter's achievement. "She's a good kid," David said to me while we were cleaning up afterward. "You should be proud." "I am. She's handled this whole situation better than either of her parents did." Divorce is hard on everyone, but kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. "You speak from experience?" "My parents divorced when I was in high school. Messy situation, lots of anger and blame. But you know what I learned? Kids don't need their parents to stay together. They need their parents to act like adults." I looked across the yard at Emma, who was laughing at something Red was telling her, and realized David was right. Emma didn't need Bree and me to be married. She needed us to be responsible, reliable parents who put her welfare ahead of our own hurt feelings. "Thanks," I said, "for being good to both of them. Thanks for raising a daughter who's easy to be good to." That night, after everyone had gone home and Emma had fallen asleep, I sat on our small balcony and thought about the year that had just passed. 12 months ago, I'd been a married man living in a house with a mortgage and a wife who was planning to leave me for another man. Tonight, I was a single father living in an apartment above a bakery, with a daughter who was about to start college and an ex-wife who was building a new life with someone else. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a good life. Different from what I'd expected, but good in ways I was still discovering. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Thanks for the party, Dad, and thanks for everything else too. Love you." I texted back, "Love you too, kiddo. Sweet dreams." As I sat there in the quiet evening air, I realized that the story wasn't over. Emma would go to college, I'd keep running the auto shop, Bree would continue building her new relationship. There would be new challenges, new complications, new opportunities for both success and failure. But for the first time in over a year, I wasn't worried about what came next. Emma and I had survived the worst thing that had ever happened to our family, and we'd come out stronger on the other side. The night Porter broke was the night everything fell apart, but it was also the night everything began again. Some endings, I'd learned, are really just beginnings in disguise. 3 weeks later, Emma left for college with 2 suitcases, a mini fridge, and enough anxiety about leaving me alone to make me promise I'd call her every Sunday. "You're sure you'll be okay?" she asked for the 10th time as we unloaded her stuff in the dorm parking lot. "I'm sure. You're the one going off to live with strangers and eat cafeteria food." "Dad, I'm serious. Promise me you won't just work all the time and become some kind of hermit. I promise I'll have a life outside the auto shop. A life that includes other people. Real people, not just Red and Mrs. Henderson. Real people. Got it." She hugged me tight, and for a moment she was 5 years old again, afraid of the dark and convinced that I could fix anything. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. "Your mom and I both are." "I know. And Dad? I'm proud of you too." The drive home was long and quiet, filled with the kind of silence that comes after something important has ended. Emma was starting her adult life, and I was starting whatever came after being a full-time single parent. When I got back to the apartment, I found a card Emma had left on my pillow. Inside, she'd written, "Thank you for showing me what it looks like to handle hard things with dignity. Thank you for choosing me when it mattered most. Thank you for being the kind of father I can be proud of. Love always, Emma." I sat on the edge of my bed and read the card 3 times, feeling something settle in my chest that I hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. The next morning, I went to work at Murphy's auto shop, where Red was waiting with coffee and a knowing smile. "How's it feel to be an empty nester?" "Weird. Good weird, but weird. You know what you need? If you're about to suggest I start dating, I'm going to throw this wrench at you. I was going to suggest you need a project, something to keep your hands busy while your brain adjusts to not worrying about Emma every 5 minutes." He was right, as usual. That afternoon, I started restoring a 1967 Mustang that had been sitting in the back of the shop for years, waiting for someone with the time and patience to bring it back to life. As I worked on the engine, carefully cleaning each part and replacing what couldn't be salvaged, I thought about second chances and new beginnings. The car had been neglected, abandoned, left to rust in a corner while life moved on around it. But underneath all that damage, the bones were still good. With enough time and effort, it could run again. Maybe even better than before. Some things, I realized, could be rebuilt after all, just not in the way you expected.